All right, in today's video, we're talking about floating in the dark.
Usually want to have that other shot, but it's okay.
Are we gonna do it again?
No.
In order to find the light in ourselves, we must first explore the darkness. Just not here because that's kind of strange. Yeah, do that on your own time. So today we're talking about floating in the dark. It's one of those things that is not the easiest conversation to have with people, but it's also really simple as well, which is it's personal preference. One of the biggest pieces of any either tips that we give, info we share, whether it's float in the dark, claustrophobia, boredom, any other types of videos that we're gonna cover, it's always just based on personal preference and what you need to do to feel the most comfortable. So what are we starting off with?
A lot of people think it's completely pitch black, so maybe address that there actually is lights if you want.
Yeah, I guess that's so. Although a lot of people come in float, they actually want complete darkness, and boy, let me tell you, we have complete darkness. If you're trying to have that raw float experience, you can totally do that. But also what you can totally do is have some lights on in your float tank. Not only do we have really nice basin lights, but we also have really cool star lights as well. So you can have one or the other. It's a really cool option that people have. So if you want to kind of have all the lights on, you have both your star lights and the basin lights in the bottom of the tank, great.
And I also heard a lot of stories of people that when they come float for the first time, they have lights on initially, and then when they honestly within the first 10-15 minutes, they just turn them right back off.
Yeah.
So
It's a certainty thing, and it's kind of like a control thing or a choice thing. We've had some people who've come in to our space and they almost introduce themselves as, I'm gonna keep the lights on. They don't even say their name, they just go, I'm keeping the lights on. And we're like, cool. And you're a little bit nervous, but that's awesome. And they quite often will turn the lights off midway through their float or maybe in their second float. And then of course, when those people come out, they're just like super chill. I'm like, oh yeah, that's not even an issue. I'm gonna float with lights off all the time. The most baseline part of floating in the dark is like, you don't have to.
and that's that video.
Yeah, that's that video. Yeah, you don't have to, but eventually you probably are going to want to. I say that floating in the dark in a float tank, in a strange way, is like comfortable darkness. A lot of the time we don't like floating in the dark, is because we don't like the idea of the uncertainty, the fear, what dark represents. But when you're in a float tank, and especially with what's happening to our nervous system, and it's just like an incredibly chill environment, yeah, you end up finding that when you have the lights off, it's actually just like this big comfortable blanket. And when you're in a float tank, even though we have bigger rooms, I find, and a lot of our customers will actually say, once you turn the lights off and there's nothing happening in the tank, it actually feels like a way larger space than you would ever imagine to begin with. So,
It's like Inception.
I guess,
It's not actually like Inception.
I'd love to hear that metaphor in more detail.
Yeah, not today.
Now, this is an interesting one. You might keep this in, you might not. Is there a difference between the two options? And so what we meant by that is 3 options. So having both lights on, one or the other on, and just being completely in the dark. Having all the lights on are obviously like you just want everything on. It's your first time, you're trying to explore, play around, just do your thing. At some point you might say, you know what, it's a little bit too bright, but I want to kind of cut things down a bit. But some people just like the idea that when they do open their eyes, or they're having a nap or something, or they're just like in a super deep state, when they do wake up, they kind of like the idea of not just being in pitch black. I'm a big fan of that. But at the end of the day, that's kind of the big difference between both lights on and only one set of them on. Some people will even turn the star lights off so they don't have anything directly in their eyes, and then just keep the bottoms on. Most people go to option 3 or option 1, depending how you look at it, is just being completely in the dark. Now, here's the sciencey, not necessarily proven, a lot of anecdotal evidence, and again, how people will perceive their own experience. But from our own experience, from customers' experience, members' experience, and people all over the place who float, a big premise of floating or flotation therapy or sensory deprivation is pulling away reducing as much stimuli as possible, so it gives your nervous system a chance to relax. In order to do that, we need to try to reduce as much stimuli. So like trying to reduce light that goes into our eyeballs, into our little eyeball things, the noise or vibrations that can hit our ears. I don't know why it's so challenging to talk about ears and eyes.
Early.
So it's super early. But yeah, it's basically removing light from your eyes, having to perceive anything, sound from your ears, having to perceive anything, removing your body's need to regulate temperature, have to hold posture. This is my definition of posture. You're taking away all that excess stimuli that your body usually uses to kind of analyze the world around you, and then now you're just chopping it all away. But once you feel comfortable enough to turn those lights off, that's just one extra layer that you're taking care of to help you reach a deeper state. So,
Good explanation.
Yeah, I was really rough at the beginning there, but we kind of smoothed it out somewhere.
Yeah.
What else is there? I don't know, kind of hitting on the same things that we've talked about.
There's only so many things you can talk about floating in the dark about.
I think doing these videos, covering the same points a couple times in different ways for different people to hear different things, is just eventually getting like some members and people that we know who struggle with that and now don't, and just have them explain their own experience.
Yeah, because there's definitely people that I've seen that have floated a whole bunch of times, and they're like, oh yeah, I float the lights on every once in a while.
Yeah.
And I found that interesting because for me, I don't think I've ever floated the lights on.
So the kind of to simplify a point we probably already made though, is you're going to float however you're going to feel comfortable, but just so that you know, I was going to say something very not as important as I made it out to be.
No, okay.
But once you float a few times, you're going to naturally, most likely, most people, not all, most people will eventually float with their lights off. As we're doing this video, I realized that we're talking a lot about like the worrying side of things. Can I float with the lights on? What people are often saying is, do I have to float in the dark? Am I going to be scared in the dark? Like, people can ask the same question like a million different ways. The thing I would like to, I think would be cool for us to leave on a cool note.
You're trying.
I'm trying. Is float in the dark is, once you've floated a couple times, is one of the coolest things ever. You have no kinesthetic awareness, you have no perception of depth. Your brain sometimes makes you feel like you're just spinning around even though you're not.
Visuals.
Like, it's just, yeah, you sometimes get some visuals. Some people talk about hallucinations. That will be a different video. You don't generally hallucinate, you just more have visuals, like different types of tracers. Sometimes you have cool colors. Your brain's just being super active.
Or like you're in a lucid dream, you just don't know, or not so lucid dream, but you're just in a dream state. Like
some kind of like daydreaming state. A lot of time when you're floating, you end up more in like a in between sleep and being awake. And because there's no light, we sometimes just feel that's being asleep, even though you're kind of in this cool little world in the middle. There's no light that steals the darkness when you're floating in these float tanks.
Damn, son.
That was heavy.
Yeah.
Should I do a little quick summary?
No.
Floating in the dark, I'm gonna do it anyways. Floating in the dark is generally not a problem. When people come in, they're a little bit anxious. Most people will eventually shift to being in complete darkness, and not only like shift into doing it, they actually thoroughly enjoy it, and they won't float any differently. Basically, whatever you're watching this video or this clip of this video, like it, comment about things, let us know what kind of videos you want to see, let us know if you have any questions about this. And I think what we'll start throwing into these is, if you floated with us, or I guess somewhere else, probably makes the most sense if you floated with us, but if you floated with us and what we talked about today was your experience initially coming in, you're a little bit worried, and now you're somebody who completely floats in the dark, no problem, message us, email us. We might try to make a list and start making some little, I hate the word testimonial videos. We'll just make some cool videos where we talk with you.
We're going to talk to you about your experiences in floating.
So other people can see it.
So other people can see it, and they can get the insight before they come in.
Cool. All right.
All right.
Peace. You float a few times, you're going to find out what works the best for you. I mean, we pretty much could just answer every video like that, but you know. Yeah, try it out a few times. It's probably not going to be nearly as scary as you thought, and you're going to find out how it works for you. Yeah, you think Edmonton's roads are bad. You should see the ones in our brain.